What happens when a CEO trades his corner office for a mop and finds his own people scamming customers? Victor Ramsey adjusted the stiff khaki uniform shirt, tugging it lower to hide the expensive watch he forgot to leave behind. He hated pretending, but there was no other way. Something felt off at store 12, one of the 20 locations his late father had left him. Sales were steady, but there were too many customer complaints slipping through. He couldn't trust the reports anymore. They were all sunshine and rainbows, and Victor knew better. He hadn't met most of the front-line workers since the company exploded over the past 5 years. Store managers changed often, and district managers were too busy chasing numbers. Plus, with it being a corporate chain, nobody would expect the CEO to show up as a low-level porter. Especially not clean-shaven, hair dyed a little darker, wearing thick glasses, and walking with a slight limp he practiced all morning, Victor filled out the application online under a fake name, Evan Riley. He even went through the brief group interview, sitting quietly while the assistant manager, a wiry guy named Travis, barely glanced at him. They needed help. Fast turnover was bad lately because of low morale, and Travis mentioned it without shame. That's how Victor got thrown into a porter job with 0 questions. The morning was chaos. "Hey, new guy," barked a woman with a sharp voice. "You're late starting carts." Victor hustled out the door, grabbing abandoned shopping carts scattered across the parking lot. His hands burned against the metal under the rising sun. Sweat rolled down his back. He hadn't worked like this in years, and it showed. But he pushed through, keeping his head down, observing everything. Inside, the place looked polished on the outside, but behind the scenes, the cracks showed. The break room was dirty, equipment was broken, staff looked overworked and tired, and management? Nowhere to be found unless someone important showed up. By lunch, Victor was exhausted, but a young woman with a bright smile wearing a badge that said Cassidy Zimmerman Customer Service waved him over. "You're new, right? You can sit with us," she said, nodding to a small table where 2 other porters sat inhaling sandwiches. Victor joined them, grateful. Cassidy chatted easily, asking about his previous job. He made up a story about working in a small-town grocery store and shared some tips for surviving the hectic pace. "Stick with me," she said. "There's a lot of weird stuff going on." Victor leaned in. "Like what?" Cassidy lowered her voice. "Department head of services, Mr. Darnell, he's been charging customers extra for basic stuff. Like if you buy a basic delivery, he says it's mandatory to pay a fast-track fee. It's not, it's free, but he's been making up fake fees." Victor blinked. "And no one stopped it." "Some of us tried," Cassidy said, her voice tightening. "But Darnell's tight with the store manager. They just say we're confused." Victor felt a slow burn in his chest. His father built this company on trust. If this was true, it wasn't just unethical, it was personal. He decided to see it for himself. That afternoon, Victor volunteered to help in the services department where customers scheduled deliveries and pickups. Darnell, a heavy-set man with thinning hair, barely looked up when Victor entered. "You? New porter?" "Yeah, fine. Just take this paperwork to that lady at the counter." Victor grabbed the clipboard and approached a woman in her 60s, clutching a receipt. "I don't understand," she said, confused. "They said delivery was included, but now he's saying I have to pay an extra $80. Victor smiled gently. "Let me check on that for you, ma'am." He walked back to Darnell, who was laughing with another worker. "Hey, Darnell," Victor said casually, "the lady's asking about the delivery fee, says she thought it was free." Darnell's face hardened. "Tell her it's policy." "Fast track only. She can't wait around for weeks, can she?" Victor pretended confusion. "But isn't delivery included?" Darnell leaned in, voice dropping. "Look, kid, you want to keep your job. You do what you're told, now go tell her." Victor nodded, heart pounding. He returned to the woman and, with a tight smile, told her to wait a moment. Secretly, he scribbled her receipt details on a scrap of paper and tucked it into his pocket. Later, Cassidy caught up with him by the loading dock. "Be careful," she said urgently. "I've seen Darnell fire people for less." Victor smiled tightly. "Thanks for the warning." He was already planning his next move. The next day, things got worse. Victor watched as Darnell charged a young dad pushing a stroller an extra $50 for priority service that didn't even exist. When the man hesitated, worried about money, Darnell leaned over the counter and said in a low voice, "You want it delivered this month or not?" Victor's fists clenched at his sides. He had seen enough. He needed proof. He needed to catch Darnell in the act so there would be no excuses later. And tomorrow he would. End of part 1. Victor arrived early the next morning, the parking lot still wrapped in mist. He clenched the receipt from yesterday's customer in his hand, the ink slightly smudged from his grip. He had barely slept, running through every possible move in his mind. Walking through the back entrance, he clocked in at the ancient terminal, the screen flickering like it might give out any second. Cassidy passed him by the loading dock, arms full of supply boxes. "Careful today," she whispered without breaking stride. Travis said district's doing a surprise visit soon. Victor frowned slightly. That could complicate things or be the perfect opportunity. Inside the services department, Darnell was already behind the counter, barking orders to a new porter who looked barely old enough to drive. Victor pretended to organize a stack of forms nearby while keeping his ears open. Mid-morning, a woman in business attire approached the counter. Her stance was brisk, confident. "I need to schedule a sofa delivery," she said, placing a receipt down. Victor watched Darnell lean in, adopting a sickeningly sweet tone. "Well, madam, normally delivery's free, but because of inventory backlogs, we're advising customers to upgrade to priority service. Only $99. Guarantees arrival within 2 weeks." The woman raised an eyebrow. "That wasn't mentioned when I purchased it." Darnell smiled without warmth. "New policy this month." Victor stepped closer, pretending to sort through some paperwork left on the side. The woman hesitated but finally nodded, pulling out her card. Darnell quickly processed the payment, handing over a new receipt without offering any written explanation of the so-called policy. Victor knew he had enough to confront him now. But he needed undeniable proof in management's own words. Not just hearsay. He needed Darnell to admit it outright. During the lull after lunch, Victor seized his chance. Darnell leaned against the customer service counter, picking at his fingernail. Victor approached casually. "Hey, Darnell," he said, keeping his tone light. "That fast-track thing, how exactly does it work?" "What if a customer catches on?" Darnell chuckled, low and greasy. "They won't. People don't read the fine print, they're too busy. You just keep a straight face, act like it's normal, and most will pay without arguing." Victor nodded slowly, his stomach turning. "Is it a official policy?" he ventured carefully. Darnell shrugged, a smug gleam in his eye. "Does it matter? Store manager's fine with it long as the numbers look good. We get bonuses if we push enough upgrades. You want to move up around here." "Play the game." Victor's hand itched to grab him by the collar, but he forced a neutral expression and moved away. He had heard enough. By late afternoon, the usual rhythm of the store ground on. Victor helped load heavy boxes into a customer's pickup, his muscles aching more sharply than yesterday. Cassidy worked nearby, carefully restocking cleaning supplies. Victor caught her eye. "Hey, Cassidy," he said quietly, "if someone wanted to report something." "Who would they go to?" She hesitated, glancing around. "Officially, HR hotline, but it just circles back to Dennis, the store manager. Nothing ever comes of it." Victor's jaw tightened. "Thanks," he said, voice rougher than he intended. She gave him a searching look but said nothing more. Around 5, Travis called a hasty meeting near the break room. Staff gathered, many looking drained. "District managers swinging by tomorrow morning," Travis announced, chewing gum loudly. "Everyone needs to be on point." Smiles. Extra upsells. Clean uniforms. Victor noticed how Cassidy's shoulders sagged slightly, as if the extra pressure was a physical weight. As they dispersed, Victor caught up with Travis. "Question," he said. "What happens if someone doesn't hit their upsell targets?" Travis snorted. "They get fewer hours." "Or no hours. Simple." Victor filed that away grimly. That evening, after clocking out, he sat in his car, hands gripping the steering wheel. The sun dipped low, painting the sky in bruised colors. He stared at his reflection in the rearview mirror, the fake glasses slipping down his nose. If he let this go on another day, more customers would be cheated. More good employees like Cassidy would be crushed under the weight of a corrupt system. He pulled out his phone and called Jenna, his executive assistant, the only person who knew where he really was. "Jenna, I need you here tomorrow morning, quietly. Bring HR head Craig with you. Tell them to come in plain clothes, no badges, no announcements." "Understood," Jenna said crisply. Victor ended the call, adrenaline buzzing under his skin. He would not let his father's legacy rot under these people's greed. Not another day. The next morning arrived brittle and cold. Victor wore the same wrinkled uniform, blending into the crowd of employees scrambling to make the store spotless. At exactly 9, Jenna and Craig walked in separately, dressed like regular customers. They browsed near the front, pretending to look at appliances. Victor caught Cassidy's eye and gave a small nod. She looked puzzled but returned to stacking brochures. Victor approached Darnell at the services desk. "Busy morning, huh?" Victor said lightly. Darnell barely glanced at him. "Yeah, district's a pain. They nitpick everything." Victor leaned in, pitching his voice low. "Hey, about that fast-track thing, should we push it harder today?" "Boost the numbers?" Darnell grinned, flashing yellowed teeth. "Exactly. District loves hearing about new revenue streams. Keep it rolling." Victor straightened, heart hammering. He turned toward the center of the store and raised his hand just once, catching Craig's attention. Without hesitation, Craig and Jenna approached, their faces set. Victor rounded back toward Darnell, who was now tapping on the register impatiently. Before Darnell could react, Victor pulled off his glasses, running a hand through his hair, standing taller. "Darnell Reynolds," Victor said, voice cutting through the hum of the store. "You're finished here." Darnell stared, mouth open. Who are you?" Victor's voice was cold steel. "Victor Ramsey, owner and CEO." The color drained from Darnell's face. Around them, employees froze. A customer dropped a shopping basket with a loud clatter. Craig pulled out a slim folder, thick with documented complaints, receipts, and Victor's handwritten notes. Craig's voice was calm but firm. "Mr. Reynolds, you are terminated effective immediately for gross misconduct, fraud, and violation of customer trust. Security will escort you off the premises." Darnell sputtered, looking around for support that wasn't there. Travis edged away, pretending to busy himself with a display of blenders. As security approached, Darnell tried to bluster. "This is ridiculous. Everyone does it. It's how we hit targets." Victor didn't flinch. "You're responsible for your own actions. Get out." As Darnell was led away, Cassidy stood frozen by the cleaning aisle, mouth slightly open. Victor walked over to her. "Cassidy Zimmerman," he said, voice softer. "You've been nothing but honest and hardworking. I'm promoting you to interim department head effective immediately, full training and raise included." She blinked rapidly, struggling to find words. "Thank you. You earned it," Victor said simply. He turned to the gathered employees. "This store is changing. Starting today, no more scams, no more pressure to lie to customers. Anyone who has concerns, my door is open." The air seemed to shift, the tension crackling and then easing. Cassidy straightened, her expression fierce with new resolve. Victor knew this was just the beginning. There would be more to fix, more trust to rebuild, but for the first time in a long time he felt something real stir in his chest, pride. Victor stood near the customer service desk, surveying the uneasy crowd that had gathered after Darnell's removal. A few employees whispered to each other, stealing glances at him. Others kept their heads down, pretending to be busy reorganizing shelves that didn't need organizing. Cassidy watched him carefully, the promotion still fresh on her face, but tempered now with a budding sense of responsibility. Victor gave her a small nod before turning toward the front of the store where Jenna and Craig were waiting. He motioned for them to follow him into the back offices. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a sterile glow over the cramped hallway lined with outdated company posters. Inside the conference room, Victor closed the door. The walls were thin enough that the muted sounds of the store filtered through, but he kept his voice low and steady. Craig, start immediate checks on all service transactions from the past 6 months. Look for patterns, inconsistencies. Pull security footage if needed. I want a full audit. Craig nodded, already pulling out his laptop. Jenna, get me a schedule of who's been approving these service charges. I don't just want Darnell, I want to see who else knew and looked the other way. She tapped a quick note into her phone, her expression unreadable. Victor leaned back against the table, arms folded. This wasn't one man's mistake. It was a culture that allowed it. And we're going to burn it out. They didn't need to ask what would happen if anyone else was found guilty. Leaving them to their tasks, Victor returned to the floor. The store buzzed with an odd, stiff energy, like everyone was walking on a tightrope. Customers trickled through, oblivious to the internal upheaval. Employees kept glancing at him, unsure whether to approach or avoid him entirely. Cassidy stood by the services counter, straightening the cluttered brochures. She stiffened as Victor approached, but he kept his tone light. "Walk with me," he said. She set the stack down and fell in step beside him as they moved toward the furniture section. "What's your biggest challenge here, Cassidy?" Victor asked, keeping his pace slow. She hesitated, then answered carefully. "Staffing. We're always short. Managers cut hours to save payroll costs. Most of us are clocking out and still doing cleanup off the clock because we don't want to leave a mess, but it's not sustainable." Victor absorbed that quietly. "Why hasn't anyone raised it higher?" Cassidy gave a hollow laugh. "Every time someone complains, they get scheduled less. Or they get shifts no one wants. People learn fast to stay quiet." Victor stopped near a leather couch display, turning to face her. "That ends now. No more retaliation. If you see it happen from anyone, I want to know immediately." Cassidy's eyes widened slightly, but she nodded. "And one more thing," Victor added. "I'm authorizing emergency overtime for anyone willing to stay late this week to catch up on overdue tasks. Voluntary only." "No pressure." A slow breath escaped her lips, as if a weight she hadn't realized she was carrying had lessened slightly. "I'll spread the word," she said. Victor watched her walk away, already pulling a few coworkers aside to quietly relay the change. It would take more than policy changes to rebuild trust, but small steps mattered. Near the electronics department, Victor spotted Travis hunched over the counter, fiddling with his phone. No customers nearby, no employees needing help. Just Travis scrolling through social media with a glazed look. Victor approached silently until he stood just a few feet away. Travis glanced up, eyes widening when he recognized him. He shoved the phone into his back pocket. "Boss. Just checking inventory updates," he stammered. Victor didn't blink. "Walk with me, Travis." Travis hesitated, then fell into an awkward shuffle beside him. "Tell me about your role here," Victor said calmly. "Well, assistant manager. I handle scheduling, supplies, customer issues when they come up. I also help oversee the service desk sometimes." Victor nodded thoughtfully. "And how long have you known about the unauthorized service fees?" Travis froze mid-step. I mean, I heard rumors, but I didn't have proof. Figured it wasn't my place to dig." Victor stopped walking and turned to face him fully. "Not your place to protect customers from being cheated." Travis swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing. "I didn't want to cause trouble. I need this job." Victor's expression hardened. "You think protecting your job matters more than protecting the people who trust us with their money." Travis's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. Victor didn't waste another second. "You're terminated, effective immediately. Craig will handle your exit paperwork." Travis looked like he might argue, but one glance at Victor's face told him better. He turned and shuffled back toward the offices without another word. Victor exhaled quietly, feeling the store's oppressive atmosphere shift again just a little. Fear wasn't a healthy motivator, but accountability was non-negotiable. By late afternoon, Jenner returned with a short list of employees who had authorized suspicious transactions besides Darnell. Only two names stood out: Marcus from appliances and Elise from home goods. Victor found Marcus first, helping a customer choose a washing machine. He waited until the transaction finished before motioning for Marcus to join him by the side aisle. "I need a word," Victor said. Marcus, a tall man with a buzz cut and wary eyes, wiped his hands on his apron. "Yes, sir," Victor kept his voice even. "How long have you been adding unauthorized fees to delivery services?" Marcus paled slightly. I didn't start it. Darnell told us it was a pilot program, said corporate approved it." Victor studied him carefully. "You knew customers were being charged for something they shouldn't have been. Did you ever call corporate to verify?" Marcus shook his head. "No, sir." Victor's voice dropped slightly. "You're responsible for your actions. Even if someone told you otherwise." Marcus looked down, shame coloring his face. "I'm sorry. Craig will process your termination. You're done here." Marcus nodded miserably and walked away without protest. Victor didn't savor it. There was no satisfaction in cutting people loose, but the brand had to mean something. Integrity wasn't negotiable. Finding Elise took longer. She was in the stockroom, sorting through a shipment of lamps. When Victor approached, she straightened, brushing dust from her sleeves. "I heard about what happened," she said before he could speak. "You're not here to fire me, are you?" "That depends," Victor said. "Did you knowingly charge customers fake fees?" Elise's face twisted, not with guilt but defiance. "Everyone does it." "How do you think we hit quotas when you guys keep raising them every quarter?" Victor's jaw tightened. "So you admit you did it?" "I did what I had to do to survive," she snapped. "There's the door," Victor said flatly. "You're out." Elise threw her apron down, muttering under her breath as she stormed off. Victor turned back toward the store, feeling the weight of every decision settle into place. By early evening, the worst offenders were gone. The remaining staff, though shaken, moved with renewed purpose. Cassidy had already organized a team to deep clean the neglected stockroom. Another group was repairing the outdated signage near the entrance. Victor stood by the front windows, watching the fading lights spill across the parking lot. He hadn't fixed everything, not by a long shot. The store still needed more hires, better training, clearer communication channels. But for the first time in months, maybe years, it felt like the foundation was solid again. Cassidy walked over, a clipboard tucked under her arm. "We're short some hands tonight," she said. "But a bunch of us volunteered to stay late. No one's complaining." Victor nodded approvingly. "Good. Tomorrow we start recruiting properly. Better pay scales, real benefits." Cassidy's lips curved into a small, determined smile. "About time." Victor looked around the store once more. Shelves half-stocked, employees moving briskly but tiredly. Customers chatting with staff who actually listened. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't polished, but it was honest, and that was enough for today. By the following morning, the store atmosphere had shifted again, but this time the change was rooted in something sturdier than fear. Employees moved with a cautious optimism, not quite relaxed but no longer weighed down by the old, invisible pressure. Floors were cleaner, the service desk was operating without confusion, and customers lingered longer, asking real questions instead of rushing through suspicious transactions. Victor arrived early, wearing his usual suit for the first time in days. No more pretending. His presence was no longer a secret, and today was about cementing the changes into the store's foundation. He found Cassidy near the front, clipboard tucked under one arm, giving instructions to a few younger employees about reorganizing the entrance displays. She caught sight of him and approached, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "I put together a list of priority hires," Cassidy said, holding out a printed sheet. "Positions we absolutely need filled first based on workflow." Victor scanned the list, noting the clear, practical layout. Stock clerks, drivers, customer service reps, all critical roles. She had even included proposed hourly rates, slightly higher than what they had been offering before. "Good work," Victor said, folding the paper. "I'll have Jenna post these openings immediately." And I want you sitting in on the interviews. Cassidy's eyebrows lifted slightly. Me. You're the one who knows what this store needs day to day, Victor said. It's time the people here have a voice in who joins the team. Cassidy nodded slowly, processing the weight of the responsibility. Victor turned toward the center of the store where Craig and Jenna had set up a makeshift desk for on-the-spot applications. A small sign reading, "We're hiring. Join our team," stood propped beside a neat stack of forms. By noon, a few applicants had trickled in, some curious, some desperate. Victor stayed nearby, listening without hovering. Cassidy conducted brief pre-screenings, asking direct questions about work ethic, schedule flexibility, and customer service experience. One applicant, a wiry man in his 40s, leaned against the desk with a lazy posture. "So, what's the minimum I gotta do to get by around here?" he asked, smirking slightly. Cassidy's expression didn't change, but her voice was firm. "We're looking for people who care about doing the job right. If you're not interested in that, this isn't the place for you." The man shrugged and sauntered out without bothering to pick up an application. Victor caught Cassidy's eye and gave a slight nod of approval. Another applicant, a young woman with tired eyes and calloused hands, spoke earnestly about her experience loading heavy freight at her last job. Cassidy took her information carefully, promising a follow-up interview later in the week. Meanwhile, Craig continued auditing past transactions in a quiet corner, occasionally shaking his head as he uncovered more small abuses of power that had gone unchecked. Every report, every receipt, every detail was being documented so that no stone would be left unturned. During a short lull, Victor pulled Travis's replacement assistant manager, a soft-spoken woman named Denise, into a private conversation near the break room. "I'm putting together a new code of conduct," Victor said. "Real standards that go beyond the handbook. Things like integrity, accountability, and support for employees." Denise adjusted her glasses, nodding thoughtfully. "That would make a big difference. People need to know the leadership has their backs." "Exactly," Victor said, "and it needs to be enforced evenly, no favorites. No passes for high performers who act badly." Denise's mouth tightened slightly. "That's how Darnell got away with things for so long. People thought if you hit your numbers, you could get away with anything." "Not anymore," Victor said. The store wasn't just rebuilding its staffing and processes. It was rebuilding its soul. Later that afternoon, Victor walked the floor again, this time observing how the employees interacted without the toxic figures looming over them. Cassidy was showing a new hire how to properly organize the seasonal section. The stock team was actually communicating between departments, something that had clearly been neglected before. A customer approached the service desk, holding a delivery receipt with a puzzled look. A younger employee, clearly nervous, called Cassidy over. Victor stayed back, watching. Cassidy leaned in, listening carefully to the customer's concern about a delivery date. Instead of brushing her off or trying to upsell, Cassidy apologized for the confusion, checked the available slots, and offered the soonest available date without any additional charges. "Thank you for being honest," the customer said, smiling warmly as she left. Victor allowed himself a quiet breath of relief. Near the end of the day, Jenna handed him a slim folder marked Final Audit Summary. Victor flipped through it, absorbing the hard numbers. Roughly 15% of all service transactions over the past year had included unauthorized charges. The revenue boost had been artificial, masking deeper issues with customer loyalty and employee satisfaction. He closed the folder with a snap. "We'll issue refunds where appropriate," Victor said. "Reach out personally." "No form letters," Jenna nodded, already making notes. "And the employees who turned a blind eye but didn't actively participate?" she asked. "They'll get retraining," Victor said. "One chance, but they'll know the expectations now are different." Very different. As the last customers trickled out, Victor gathered the remaining employees near the front of the store. No formal stage, no microphone, just him, standing among them, eye to eye. "I owe you an apology," Victor said, voice steady but carrying across the room. I should have seen what was happening here sooner. I trusted systems instead of people. That won't happen again. The employees listened, some folding their arms, others letting their guarded expressions soften slightly. This store was built on trust, Victor continued. Between us and the customers, between leadership and staff, we lost that, but starting today we're building it back, together. He let the words hang in the air, giving them weight. No more cutting corners, no more protecting bad behavior because it's easier. If you see something wrong, you say something, and you'll be protected for it. Cassidy stood near the front, her chin lifted slightly higher than it had been days ago. Victor continued, we're raising wages across the board by 10%. Full-time employees will get better health benefits starting next quarter. And we're creating an internal committee made up of people from every department to bring concerns directly to leadership. A small murmur rippled through the group, disbelief giving way to cautious hope. This isn't charity, Victor said. It's because you deserve it, because this company doesn't exist without you. He stepped back, letting them absorb it. Cassidy approached him afterward, her voice low with emotion. You really mean all of this? Victor met her gaze without hesitation. I do. And if I ever forget it again, I expect you to remind me. Cassidy gave a short laugh, the first real one he had heard from her. Deal. As the employees drifted out, some staying to straighten displays and others heading home to their families, Victor lingered by the front doors. The store wasn't perfect, it would never be, but it was honest work now. Honest people trying to build something better, and for Victor, that was more valuable than any quarterly report or shareholder meeting. The sun dipped low over the parking lot, casting long shadows across the asphalt. Victor watched as Cassidy and a few others finished locking up, chatting quietly among themselves not out of fear, but camaraderie. He turned away from the glass, feeling the solid weight of the keys in his pocket. Keys to a place worth fighting for. He would never let it rot again.